I would have not followed. But the best way to understand the fall of Adam and Eve is the fall of a champion. We are just from an election and you can see if anybody came and told you, this person failed, I should have been the one to take up his place on the won that election. That is not possible because the whole process makes sure that the person who's at the top is the best person you can offer. And when he could lose, it means the whole entire group has lost. The same thing with Adam and Eve. Of all human beings, he is the champion of the human race at this point. And no human being can claim that if it was a duel between me and the devil, then I would have won. Such is not the case. If Adam fell, it means we must be convinced that each one of us would have also fallen while we in the same situation without the grace of God preserving us. The third example of authority failing is Aaron and the golden calf. So Aaron was compelled by the chief to create a calf god so that they can worship because Moses was not God. And Moses reproached Aaron with this question: what did these people unto thee that thou hast brought so great a sin upon them? You can see Moses is looking at the act of Aaron as a lack of charity, almost like vengeance. He's convinced that Aaron must have had an intention of vengeance because the thing he made the Jews do, the evil that he has brought upon the Jews, could only come from a heart that wanted them to be destroyed. And that's why you see in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses had to plead with God and fast for 40 days for the forgiveness of Aaron. And he was exceedingly angry against Aaron also, and would have destroyed him, and I prayed in like manner for him. If you have time, you can go and read the entire chapter, the 9th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, and you'll see how we should respond as Catholics towards an authority that has failed. Moses, instead of resorting to criticism and rebuking Aaron first, he first went for 40 days to pray for him, for God to forgive him. We have the same duty as Catholics when we see the authority failing to first pray before we can act. The next example is Solomon. Solomon, at his old age, built idols for his mistresses, and he himself worshipped them. And when he was now old, his heart was turned away by women to follow strange gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. But Solomon worshipped Astarte, the goddess of the Sidonians, and mother of the idol of Ammon. So at this point, if you're obedient, you have found yourself in total conflict with God. So far we can see how it is possible for a very high authority to mislead Catholics or any other person into false worship because of the weakness of men. And even that we have seen today in the prayer of the Mass, I think it was the communion prayer. We are asking God to take care of the church because the human weakness is frail. Also, we have the sons of Heli who are giving and offering illicit sacrifices. For the sacrifice to be laid to your heart to give God the best part. But the sons of Heli were taking upon themselves the best part and sacrificing the worst part to God. And such a sacrifice was considered illicit in this time. It was not allowed. That's what illicit means. It's not allowed. And yet the sons of Heli did this. And Heli himself fell into their condemnation because he had all the chances in his life to rebuke them, to correct them, but he did not. And so God said to someone to go and tell Heli, Behold, I do a thing in Israel, and whosoever shall hear it, and whosoever shall hear it, both his ears shall tingle. In that day I will raise up against Eli all the things I have spoken concerning his house. I will begin and I will make an end, for I have foretold unto him that I will judge his house forever for iniquity, because he knew that his sons did wickedly, and did not chastise them. Therefore I have sworn in the house of Eli that the iniquity of his house shall not be expiated with victims of offerings forever. That in his house there is no offering that can be made to expiate the sins of his son. This is the seriousness of offering these illicit sacrifices. That even Eli had to suffer because he did not report it. The next example is Caiaphas is taking the father Annas, or the other way around. The high priest willingly led Jews to crucify Jesus. If we read the story of the Passion, we clearly see a point where all authority is being drawn to reject the supreme authority, which is God himself. We have Pilate telling to Christ, don't you know that I have the authority to crucify you or to release you? Basically, he's telling our Lord, it is my authority that determines whether you're guilty or innocent. It doesn't matter what you have done. It is my authority that determines. So in the same way, if today a bishop was to say, it is my authority that determines whether you're Catholic or not. We are Catholic first by faith, and then the recognition of the bishop follows that. And if the bishop was to reject or to refuse to recognize you as a Catholic because you're faithful, then that's what I was talking about in the beginning. The conflict of obedience and fidelity. You want to be a faithful Catholic, but to be one, you lose the recognition of the bishop. So we are torn in between. Should I follow the recognition of the bishop and let me live peacefully in this world? Or should I, like a martyr, brace myself and take faith and follow the consequences of that evil that we follow? And so here we see the high priest even go ahead and say, his blood be upon us and upon our children. They rejected our Lord, and they even placed upon themselves a curse. The next example is St. Peter denying our Lord 3 times. At the foot of the cross, we only had one apostle, John. And many people criticize, and they always quote the statement, where the Pope is, that's where the church is. But the Pope at that time was not at the foot of the cross. At this point of Calvary, if you were with Peter, you would have been at the wrong place. Yes, you recognize authority, but you cannot just follow authority blindly. You have to have a heart of charity like St. John, to be at the right place at the right time, especially when it comes to the sacrament of the Catholic Church. And in the commentary of the book of Galatians, the 2nd chapter, it says, and Paul reprehending him was not any argument against his supremacy, for such cases that an inferior may and sometimes ought with respect to admonish his superior. This is a commentary before Vatican II, before the new Mass, and so it's very objective. In some instances, an inferior can actually oppose a superior, especially when the matter being commanded is against the will of God. If it is against the heart of God, we must, it's even an obligation rather than a request. And St. Paul also opposed Peter to his face because he was not living according to the gospel by rejecting to dwell with the Gentiles. We also have the example of Pope Liberius. Now we're moving down to the historical example. Pope Liberius was the first pope not to be named as saint. And this is because he signed off a document which was Arian. Arianism was a heresy that was teaching that Jesus is just a human being. He's just a human being. He's not divine. He's just a man. Maybe a demigod, but not God. A very super saint. And at this time, there were some saints who rejected this position. The one who was in charge of this group, everybody agrees to Saint Athanasius, but was also Saint Eusebius. And these bishops were excommunicated. They were rejected, exiled from the Catholics, all the Catholic seats. In the martyrology that is read in the Holy Spirit Christ, if you look at the martyrology of May 2nd, which is the feast day of St. Athanasius, it says that he couldn't find an exile anywhere around the world. He was moving from one see, one Catholic see to the next, and in every see was being excommunicated. And one of his letters he wrote, and he said, even if Catholics faithful to tradition are reduced to harmful, they are the ones who are the true church of Jesus Christ. You know, this is a very tough teaching because at this time we were saying 97% of the bishops were Arians. 97% were Arians. And even those bishops who have taken a see for almost 20 years, he was called Bishop Eusebius, another Eusebius, not the same. And he was himself an Arian. And at this time, Catholics were being killed in Alexandria, they were being persecuted, and they refused to attend the masses of the Arian bishops. And so they would hide themselves in houses, in various locations to have the mass given to them by priests who were ordained by Saint Athanasius and Bishop Eusebius, Saint Eusebius. And at this time, they were being hunted down by the other Eusebius. And this is when St. Athanasius wrote this letter. And I think it would be good for me to just read it quickly, and then we'll understand exactly, because this letter might as well be written today, for me to make proper sense. He starts by saying, may God console you. What saddens you is the fact that others have occupied the churches by violence, while during this time you are on the outside. It is a fact that they have premises, but you have the apostolic faith. They can occupy our churches, but they are outside the true faith. You remain outside the places of worship, but the faith dwells within you. Let us consider what is more important, the place or the faith. The true faith, obviously. Who was lost and who was born in this trouble? The one who keeps the premises or the one who keeps the faith? True. The premises are good when the apostolic faith is preached there. They are holy if everything takes place there in a holy way. You are the ones who are happy, you who remain in the church by your faith, who hold firmly to the foundations of the faith, which has come down to you from the apostolic tradition. And if an inexplicable jealousy has tried to shake it on a number of occasions, it has not succeeded. They are the ones who have broken away from it in the present crisis. No one ever will prevail against your faith, beloved brothers, and we believe that God will give us our churches back someday. Thus, the more violently they try to occupy the places of worship, the more they separate themselves from the church. They claim that they represent the church, but in reality, they are the ones who are expelling themselves from it and going astray. Even if Catholics faithful to tradition are reduced to a handful, they are the ones who are the true church of Jesus Christ. The reason why I find this very intriguing to read today is because we are exactly in the same situation, but Pope Pius X himself said that this situation is worse than the Arian Christ. Because he says that the modernist heresy is the synthesis of all heresies. It is a perfect caricature of the Catholic Church. The art of caricature is the art of making cartoons, to make something appear to be. So they take what is distinct and exaggerate it. To the point, if you have to look at a cartoon of a certain person, if they exaggerate a certain feature, you definitely know this is the image of so and so. So the devil has perfected his caricature with modernism more than he did with Arianism. In Arianism, it was more obvious to see that where the heresy was, because Jesus is God, the Bible says so. And it's evident. But with modernism, Pope Pius X was saying it's a synthesis. It's perfectly done in such a way that it even appeals to the emotion of many people. It sounds very charismatic, and you wouldn't even tell between the heretic and the Catholic. Because they have fine-tuned each and every element of what they say. They're very careful with what they mean. They keep it ambiguous so that they can confuse more and more Catholics. But today we are going to see that this attempt has failed. The fact that all of us are here, it means that we have seen something and a question has popped in our minds, that there's a problem somewhere. So the next example is Pope Honorius. Pope Honorius, the first was a monolithist. It's a heresy that was teaching that Jesus has one way. The problem with this heresy, why I decided to point it out, is because this conference is about obedience. And obedience is particularly in the will more than it is in the heart. If Jesus does not have the human will, then it is not warranting our salvation or by merit. Because the divine will cannot suffer, the divine will cannot go through with what Jesus went, the suffering of Jesus, and still merit it, because it was merited by an acceptance, an obedience. We fell by disobedience, and we were saved by obedience. The fall of Adam came by disobedience. And at the end of this, I'll read from this book of Dominion, where we can clearly see that without the obedience of Christ, this is what God has written and has given us as the means of our salvation. And because obedience is in the will, it means that it was then making sense that Jesus had a human will too. And this human will is what has merited our salvation. And so when Pope Honorius was teaching that Jesus had no human will, only a divine will but two natures, then it means Jesus was basically a robot. A robot with a system inside it that does whatever it has been told to do, just passively. There's no merit to that. Merit can only be achieved by the will. So it is the human will in Christ that has merited our salvation. And that's why he was condemned by Pope Leo II. We also anathematized Honorius, who did not purify this apostolic church by traditional apostolic doctrine, but by treachery, tried to overturn the Immaculate Faith. So you can clearly see that it is possible that an authority can mislead the faith that we hold in our heart. And here we have a proper example of a pope who was misleading the church. So in the book, The Soul of Apostolate by John Baptist, he says the heart of the apostle believes in very truth when he beholds the sufferings of the church. When we behold the sufferings of the church, any person who loves the church must believe in his death when he beholds whatever the church is suffering today. And the reason why I put this because of what we're about to share next. So I'd like to just see, before we look at the recent examples of authority misguiding the faithful, let us look at how we're supposed to respond before we enter into what we're going to look at. So, in the book of The Soul of the Apostolate, is where this quote is coming from. It says, "The heart of the apostle breathes, in very truth, when he beholds the suffering of the church, but his manner of suffering has nothing in common with that of the man animated by no supernatural spirit. This is easily seen when we consider the behavior and the feverish activity of the latter as soon as difficulties arise. And when we look at his fits of impatience and of dejection, his despair sometimes, his complete collapse in the presence of ruin beyond repair. The genuine apostle makes use of everything, success as well as failure, to increase his hope and to expand his soul in confident abandonment to providence. There is not the slightest detail of his apostolate that does not serve as occasion for an act of faith. There is not a moment of his persevering toil that does not give him a chance to prove his life. For by practicing custody of the heart, he manages to do everything with more and more perfect purity of heart, and by his abandonment, he makes his ministry day by day more selfless." So basically what he's saying is, when we are met with a crisis, we should not face it as if we are not moved by the spiritual life. In us, there is a spiritual life, and so whatever we are looking at does not cause us despair, because we know at any given situation, any circumstance, God is giving us a chance to make a better act of faith. It is not to despair, it is not to be impatient, it is to make a better act of faith. And even in the teaching of the Maria, he says that it is of more merit to practice faith in such a crisis than to do it when things are more easy. When the authorities are all in line with the teaching of Christ, when you can clearly see that such and such a person truly holds the place of Christ in my life, then we can be able to acknowledge by faith that this person truly is a pope, this person is the bishop, this person is a priest. But when the contrary is happening, this act of faith becomes harder. And by the virtue of it becoming harder, it means we gain more merit. That though we see the weaknesses and the suffering in the church and what the priests and the bishops and the popes are doing, it leads us not to despair, but rather to make acts of faith and hope. And so with that, let's go to the first instance. Here we have Pope John Paul II in 1986. The picture is not clear, but you can go just as Assisi 1986. For the first time, perhaps in history, a Pope called together several religions to come and have a common prayer meeting. And in this meeting, there was given a point where statues of Buddha were placed as the tabernacle, and Buddhists were allowed to worship Buddha in the Church of Assisi. There was blessing of incense by shamans, witches, and all sorts of kind of rituals. There was even a cardinal who, whenever he started a prayer after this, he used to start the prayer by saying, "Let the spirit of Assisi descend upon us." And this is a classic example of an authority starting to mislead the church. Because we have here the statement of St. Paul, "And what from God has come with the lie." The lie was God in the Old Testament, a false god, a demon actually, because Paul says all the gods of other nations are demons. And the sons of Hades were actually called sons of Belial because of their illicit sacrifices. So he is asking, on what concord has Christ with Belial, or what part has the faithful with the unbeliever? And what agreement has the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God. As God says, "I will dwell in them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Wherefore go out from among them, and be ye separate, says the Lord, and touch not what is unclean." You can clearly see it's condemned to have, even in the 1917 canon law, the communication is sacred communion with non-Catholics is not permitted. And we shall see it's even getting worse. This is a project that has been signed off by Pope Francis, It's called the Abrahamic Center. The Abrahamic Center has been designed by an African architect called Liturgy because they want to bring together the so-called Abrahamic faith. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because all purport to be coming from Abraham. And the idea here is that we can peacefully pray together. And even the Pope wrote an encyclical to encourage people to embrace this kind of setup for their spiritual life. And even in some universities, you find there's a chapel and written there coexist, and the chapel is attributed as an answer for the Christians, for the Catholic, for the Muslim, as a place for everyone. And this is not a new problem because in 1729, after the French Revolution, the Congregation of Faith won. So it says, because heretics and schismatics will conclude that a Catholic who worship with them approved of their errors or Rome, and also nuns and brothers bowing down before them. And the BC, it's a passport agency of the Italian Episcopal Conference, they wrote a prayer to Pachamama on our official booklet. So this prayer to Pachamama was saying, Pachamama of these places, drink and eat this offering at will, so that this earth may be fruitful. Pachamama, good mother, be favorable, make that oxen walk well, and that they not become tired. Make that seed sprout well, that nothing bad may happen to it, that the cold may not destroy it, that it produce good food. We ask this from you, give us everything, be favorable, be favorable. This is a prayer written by bishops, an official document from bishops. And in 2020, I don't know which feast it was, a feast of Our Lady, Pope Francis released a new coin in Rome, and this coin had a picture of Pachamama on the feast of Our Lady. And I don't know how we can say we follow that. And so, after looking at all these aspects of authority, kind of abandoning the faith and exposing it to heresies and to heretics and to schismatics, we have to now understand what is holy obedience. It's the person who is following through all these kind of changes, all these ambitions of the post-conciliar church. Is he the obedient one, the one who says, whatever the Pope says, I do? Or is he the one who will resist and say, I will remain faithful to the church, regardless of the consequences, whatever evil may suffer? So, there are two aspects of holy obedience. That the only obligations of holy obedience are the excuses of holy obedience. So, for me, I will just look at the excuses. When are we not to obey? And then Father Peter will address the obligations of holy obedience, the remedies, basically. So, what holy obedience obliges surpasses in infinite value, what it excuses. Meaning, when you're practicing holy obedience, when somebody gives you an order that is sinful, opposed to the will of God, it is holy obedience to reject such kind of order. But at the same time, what it obliges is more important than what it excuses. We are obliged to retain an affection to that authority, to pray for them. We saw that with Moses. Moses still remained affectionate to Aaron. And he prayed for him for 40 days until he could get God to even forgive those who had done such a sin. And because of the prayers and the affection of Moses, the Israelite nation was saved, because God wanted to annihilate all of them. then the second thing about holy obedience is there is no state, no condition, no person on earth that is not bound to obey. That's what I was saying in the beginning, there is no absolute power. Every single human being in this world is bound to some obedience. It varies from one person to the other, but there is still an aspect of obedience in everyone. So to explain it better, I'm going to use this table by, so it's a teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas. So the primary rule to obey is God, together with the revelation, which is the divine truth that Christ has taught us in scripture and tradition. And then the secondary rule is the magisterium. The magisterium serves God, but not the other way around. It is the word of God that is above the magisterium. The magisterium is to teach the word of God saintly and faithfully. So St. Thomas Aquinas says, as a man ought to obey an inferior power, in only those things which are not repugnant for superior power. Like, I cannot obey an order from my brother if my father is repugnant to me. For that's the fact. A higher authority overrules a lower authority. So also man ought to conform himself to the primary rule according to his mode. So also us, we have to conform ourselves to the primary rule, which is God, tradition, and scripture. So the faith, that is our primary rule. Man ought to conform himself to the secondary rule in those things which are not discordant from the primary rule. So the teaching of the magisterium comes only to give a concord of what the primary rule of the faith taught. It is not teaching anything new, it is not discovering anything new, it is just kind of emphasizing on what the primary rule already teaches. That in which is discordant is no longer a rule, and because of this, he ought not assent to a prelate preaching contrary to the faith, since it is discordant to the primary rule. So anybody cannot claim to be obedient to a bishop if this bishop is outwardly teaching against the primary rule, which is the teaching of the tradition of teaching. So we're not judging here the intention of the bishop. He might be well-meaning, he might be ignorant, but for us, we have to have the formation of faith is not getting us to say, in this aspect, this priest or this bishop or this pope is wrong. So this is the teaching of Vatican I on papal infallibility. It says, for the Holy Spirit was not promised to the successor of Peter, that by his revelation they might make known new doctrine, but that by his assistance they might inviolably, essentially safeguard and faithfully expound the revelation, the deposit of faith and tradition delivered through the apostles. This is the purpose of the Pope. His work is to expound the revelation faithfully, the deposit of faith, the tradition delivered through the apostles. It is not to come up with a new teaching or a new understanding. It is to take and to give. Even Christ himself said, what I teach is not my own teaching, but the teaching of my Father, the doctrine of my Father. And the apostles say that which I give to you I've accepted from Christ. So there are two things about what a bishop or a pope should do. First, to pass on and to make available what is given. That is first. And that is exactly what Lefebvre did. To only pass what has been given. That is the power. To transmit. It is not to take, calibrate, and then give your own kind of rendition of the same. It is simply to pass down what has been given. That is the only way we can be sure that we have received the true faith, if it has been received. But not something which has been created by human beings. The second thing, they have to pass on what they have received, not their own teaching or their own alteration of the teachings of Christ. So, what are we bound to as Catholics? What are we standing on when we say that it is truly obedience to follow the teaching and the traditional teaching of the Church? Is it our own will that we want to follow? Is it because disobedience is to prefer my own self-will over and above the will of a bishop or a priest or a pope? And in this case, is that what we are doing? We are bound to know those things necessary for salvation, which are contained in Scripture and tradition. That is the first thing we are bound to do. We are supposed to read our catechism, to read the Scriptures, and to understand what is the teaching of the saints from time immemorial. Therefore, since tradition also contains the teachings and definitions of the magisterium, we are able to rest upon the prior magisterial judgments in matters which are necessary for salvation. So we are not resting on our own judgments, on our own understanding, when we say that we ought to disobey the things like the Pachamama and the things which are coming from the authority. We are saying basically, let us obey the prior magisterial judgments in matters which are necessary, because the truth does not die. What was true yesterday is true today. G.K. Chesterton says, if something was true 100 years ago, and it's not true today, we might as well say that something was true yesterday and not true today. Because time does not change the truth. So he goes on to say, in other words, if a magisterial member teaches us something which is clearly contrary to the tradition of the Church, the remote rule, we are to ignore that particular teaching and pray for it. So exactly what Moses did. So here is an example of what a pope is bound to, or a bishop, or any other privilege. We have an oath that dates up to, I think, St. Gregory the Great. It's a paper oath saying, I, by the mercy of God, deacon elect and future bishop, by the grace of God, of this apostolic see, swear to Blessed Peter, Prince of the Apostles, and to your Holy Church, which today are taken up to rule under your protection. So this is an oath the bishop or the pope is making in front of Christ. That I shall guard you with all my strength, even unto giving up the ghost or shedding my blood, the rights of the true faith. So here by the rights he means the Catholic rights, like the Latin Mass, which we just from attending. I shall keep inviolate the discipline and ritual of the Church, just as I found and received it handed down by my predecessors, nor shall I admit any novelty, but shall fervently keep and venerate with all my strength all that I find handed down as verily my predecessors, disciples, and followers. So you can see there is no absolute power. Even the Pope, with all this authority, is being bound to obedience. This is a statement by Pope Richard IV, who says, since the Roman Pontiff exercises such great power among mortals, it is right that he be bound all the more by the incontrovertible, meaning not able to be denied or disputed, bonds of faith, and by the rites that are to be observed in the Church, the Church's sacraments. So the rites, the Pope is bound to the Catholic rites. Some people have made the argument that the Pope can, by his power, change the entire Mass or something of the sort. The Pope has no such power. You can see in Pope Richard IV, he says that he is bound by the bond of faith and by the rites that are to be observed regarding the Church's sacrament. So we can ask better than which the only point is God can achieve. And so to cut off the faith is like somebody cutting off the pipe outside your house and still expecting water to run through.